So I'm here today talking with Grant Davenport from the Davenport Agency of Farmers Union Insurance. Welcome, Grant.
Yes, thanks for having me, Andy.
Yeah, my pleasure. So today we're going to talk about something that nobody likes to talk about, which Grant, I think, is probably second only to my prior career working in funeral service. No one wants to talk about death. People definitely don't want to talk about or think about insurance, their insurance needs, and the like. Nonetheless, we're going to have a conversation today, hopefully some really great content, really
Absolutely.
focusing in on whether or not us as individuals, if our homeowners policy is keeping up in a hot real estate market. But before we get to that, Grant, why don't you just tell us a little bit about you, how you got started, and kind of your journey into insurance.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, growing up as a kid, nobody says I'm going to work in insurance. That's my goal per se. It just kind of, fell into my lap, had an opportunity to get into the industry. It's 10 years ago here now,
Wow.
but yeah, it's come a long way. And I've been doing my own insurance office now for just shy of 8 years in town. My current agency here, we're going to have our 5th-year anniversary in June of this year. So again, time flies, I guess, when you're having fun, but no, I enjoy it. I see it now as something that's going to be my, forever career. Hopefully, I really do enjoy working with people, helping people. It really boils down to that on a day-to-day basis of making sure they're protected, all their risks, things like that. But yeah, I enjoy the freedom of it. Again, something new every day. Everybody's situation is a little bit different. And so, yeah, and it's something I enjoy, but again, not always everybody's favorite topic, but it's an important one that needs to be discussed and looked at appropriately.
You're absolutely right. And I think I've been around town 11 years and kind of, got to know you. I don't even remember how many years ago, but we've known
Mhm.
each other for a long time. And, I think about my own insurance experience. I interned with Northwestern Mutual in college, did a little insurance, obviously not on the property and casualty side, but it was very eye opening. But then even, thinking of my personal insurance needs, I guess that's probably our professional relationship started probably at least 8 years ago
Yeah.
or 7 years ago, maybe. As I was kind of, the average person out there, I had my family had worked with a certain insurance provider for forever, and my
Yep.
dad's like, well, yeah, you just keep working with so and so. That's who we've used, and we just always use them. So I don't ask any questions. I just use them. I think they're looking out for my best interests. And boy, was I wrong, especially on the cost side, which is all the more reason why we're having this conversation today,
Sure.
not only to make sure your house is covered, but also there are a lot of things to consider with insurance, which we'll talk about that in just a second, Grant. But more specifically, the real estate market and me working in real estate, I mean, the market is just bananas. People are
Mhm.
paying record prices for homes. I listed a property last week, had 5 offers on it, and homes continue to sell way above asking price, which does cause some concern. And that's kind of what made me think that, we should get together and talk about this.
Right.
Because, Grant, a couple of weeks ago, you called me and you were like, hey, there's just with how crazy home values are, there's a product out there that kind of protects you, just to make sure that you're fully covered, that if your home burns down um, today or tomorrow, that the full replacement value is covered, especially with market prices and lumber prices. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's definitely been a challenge, probably definitely in the last year to 18 months with supply chain issues, inflations. We're just seeing that the cost of reconstruction keeps going up and up. And so how do we try to stay on top of that, protect it? We use tools that each insurance company really kind of has their own product evaluation. So based on square footage, roof age, heating type, all these factors that go in there, and it gives us a reconstruction estimate for, again, today's labor, materials. But we're fighting kind of a moving target right now, unfortunately, just with supplies, again, changing pricings. And so most property insurances on the personal side here for, your homes, there is inflation guards built into the home products, but most of those run around 4.5%. We saw here this last year that just wasn't keeping pace with things. And then secondarily, just on an annual basis here, as we're reaching out to people, trying to just say, hey, let's rerun this cost analysis, because unfortunately, most of the time it's just not keeping pace. And if there's a loss and we're short coverage, the client's not going to be happy. We're not going to be happy. So there's other pieces built into the homes as well. Again, each carrier has some different pieces. A lot of times there's potentially a 20-25% overage on there, just to make sure if costs get a little bit greater that there's some additional protection there. But also then too, some of these guaranteed replacement costs where we can put a rider or an endorsement on the home policy that says, hey, we've done our very best to evaluate this cost reconstruction, but if things change and again, the pricing is different, we want to make sure that we get that client back whole with the reconstruction, rebuilding of that property.
No, that's awesome. And that's something that I said ultimately, well, relying on your experience or your advice as the insurance expert, but something that I did opt for. And again,
Mhm.
we all hope we never have to use insurance, but we're
Correct.
really
Yeah,
glad.
I would rather be proactive with that and take the stance of let's look at these numbers, let's protect to the best of our abilities, than after the fact think, oh man, I wish I would have had this or that in place.
So speaking of those conversations you talked about, kind of reviewing things
Mhm.
annually, and I know I'm especially bad. I mean, love chatting with you when you call, but I'm always one that, what, I'm busy.
Yep.
I really don't want to come sit down. Nothing's really changed. But realistically, I mean, we really probably should be sitting down quite often. And even the average person, how often really is it necessary to sit down and review your insurance coverage?
Yeah, I mean, the general statement I can tell people is life happens. You decide that you're going to add a deck or you're going to change this or that to a property, and you move on without through your day, and it may not be top of mind to reach out to your insurance company and say, hey, we've added this or changed that. But at least for my office, if you are just a homeowner, I'm going to say once a year we would want to get together and just take truly 15 to 20 minutes, pending further questions and changes, but just go through and make sure, hey, you're comfortable with this. Here's your deductible. Here's your other coverages. And oftentimes we do uncover, minor things. Sometimes it's big stuff like, oh my goodness, we had made this change and we totally forgot to get that updated. Well, let's take advantage of that time and get that changed. But, again, to your point, not everybody always is interested in doing that, and that's absolutely their choice. It's not a requirement or being forced upon you by any means, but I think our role from my standpoint as that insurance professional is, if I'm not offering that service to you, we're not taking the appropriate steps to make sure that the home is protected appropriately.
Sure. Well, Grant, jumping into, kind of the bulk of our talk today, I want to talk about, we put together a list of kind of four
Mhm.
things that you should consider, when we're thinking in terms of insurance. And going back to my experience, I'm sure many people out there who are watching this are thinking, hey, you know what, our family's always used, we've had a relationship, we've been working with this
Mhm.
insurance provider, but you know what? I just keep paying the premium. No one ever reaches out to me. I've never reviewed
Yeah.
anything. How do I know that I'm really covered? And that kind of dives right into, kind of our first point, being confident in your insurance company and agent. And I would ask the question, if nobody ever reaches out or offers to do a review or asks about changes in your life, how can you be confident about that company or agent?
Yeah, I think that leaves a little bit to be desired for sure there. Nobody wants to become a statistic or a number or be forgotten, et cetera. And I don't believe that that's the case necessarily, but unfortunately, from the agent standpoint, the stance could be taken, well, if I haven't heard anything, everything must be the same and we're going to continue on. But like a lot of industries, insurance is a very customer service driven realm. And for, again, me to be providing the best service to people, we need to be reapproaching them about things. It's not one sale and done and move on. The intent is to be a lifelong client and to keep working with you as life changes and moves forward. And I just think that should be a service that comes with the insurance directly, is keeping tabs on what's happening in your life and making sure that we're protecting that as it moves forward.
You're absolutely right. And I just to tell a quick little story, I inherited an insurance agent once along the lines that happened to get my insurance canceled on not one, but two of my properties, and kind of was trying to pass the buck and say, well, if something happened, you know, it would be covered anyway through his
Sure.
errors and emissions insurance. And it's like, you know, we shouldn't even be having this
No.
conversation once, but let alone twice. So
Yeah.
for me, it was a pretty easy decision on what to do and where to go and kind of make a change at that time. And even if you're watching this today and thinking, you know, man, I really haven't heard from my agent, or there's something that I haven't been happy with, maybe it's time, you know, to at least go and explore a
Yeah.
new relationship.
Absolutely. It doesn't hurt. The stance that I share with everybody truly is one of two things is going to happen. You're going to meet with somebody and do a review and find out that what you have right now is good coverage, good pricings. You're happy with the customer service. Or two, you're going to find that, hey, there's something else out there for me that's, you know, better coverage, maybe better value on the pricings. But either way, as the consumer, you've done your due diligence and you're going to end up in the best spot at that point.
And that's a great segue kind of into our second point about knowing what your coverages represent. You work in the business, so I'm sure you can tell a lot of horror stories, but I think of, you know, just working in real estate and just talking to some people, you know, many of us have basements around the area, and how many people I've talked to, even over the years before I worked in real estate, about, well, my basement flooded and it wasn't covered. You know, talk a little bit about coverage and the importance of actually having those conversations.
Yeah, I think homes, like so many things, are obviously different from one another, and thus the coverages that follow them need to be adjusted for that particular property. In this spring season, unfortunately, there are households that are being affected by floods, and I do think it's important to reiterate and acknowledge that standard homeowners insurance does not cover against flood. If an individual is in a floodplain or they feel that that is a risk, they do need to go look at getting a separate flood insurance policy. And unfortunately, that is a hard conversation that we've had to have at times over the years, where something happens and just that acknowledgement that unfortunately the standard homeowners insurance isn't in place for that. But with those coverages, there are so many endorsements that can be added to a home policy, whether you have, you know, at-home businesses, or you have a secondary hunting land you need liability extended to, or you have a pole shed out, you know, at a different lot. There, every single one is a little bit different. And for us to, again, look at those details, make sure those appropriate listings are on there. I think a lot of, I'm going to call it a scheduled personal property, things of value, could be collectibles, artworks, jewelry, firearms, things that you can, again, add in here that, you know, a traditional homeowners may not extend to or not have enough without adding those extra pieces to it.
No, that's wonderful and well said. And kind of along the lines of those coverages too, Grant, you know, the probably what most people think of as the most important factor, which really shouldn't be, but a lot of us, we look at the dollar amount, and a lot of people look at the bottom line and say, wow, that's a tremendous amount of money that I'm
Mhm.
paying for something that's probably never going to happen. And price is an important factor, but it isn't everything.
Right.
Talk about that.
I would say that I personally, when talking to people, unless it's absolutely, you know, top of mind, um, it's not really a number or something that I focus on of any kind. First and foremost, you have to have the right coverage. If you don't have the right coverage, the price is irrelevant at that point, honestly. You have to have the coverages that make sense, that are in place. Yes, price is a component of this. Don't get me wrong. Everybody pays good money. You want to get a good value back out of it, but it can't be your driving force. So you're going to end up with something when that time of need arrives that the end result is not going to end well, and you're going to have a lot of unhappy parties moving forward with something that could have been prevented. And again, I'll say when talking with people, if I can go through the coverages that we just talked about and explain why someone might need or want that, when we come back and circle to the price and say, you know, it's very similar, or maybe it's even a little bit greater than what you've had before, but we can justify how we got there. Most consumers, I do believe, appreciate that and say, hey, I understand what I'm purchasing here for that extra dollars. I'm comfortable with this. Let's move forward with it. So.
Mhm. And that really brings us to kind of our last point, Grant, and that's the importance of working with an independent agent. And what does independent agent mean, in the realm of insurance, and why is that important?
Yeah, so there's two streams of insurance that somebody can go. They can look at a captive agency, which there are several of those. They offer basically one product offering, are able to give you, kind of one price with that, or the independent model, which is where an agency is contracted with a variety of companies, so we can get a variety of coverages, quotes, pricings, kind of do that shopping for the individual versus them having to go to multiple places per se. But that gives us, again, a larger array of product offerings that a given carrier might not always be the right fit, but we can go and say, look at this carrier and this carrier and have that answer for them. But again, it helps us keep our finger on the pulse of what's happening in the market as well. If there's a given company that's taking some price changes or they're struggling with claims, then we can say, hey, let's steer away from that, go over to this other company. And or when we talk about those reviews, not something that I would suggest every year, but I would say every 3 to 5 years. Hey, let's quote this out. Let's price it out. There again, you don't have to bring your information to a variety of people. We have all the information needed to take that, re-quote it out, and again, make sure we're in the best spot moving forward. So,
And Grant, just backing up to when you started talking about independent, for those who don't understand, captive versus independent, what would a captive agency be?
an example of a captive agency would be, say, your State Farm or Farm Bureau, American Families,
Okay.
where they just have their product, which is a good product, and it absolutely has its place. But again, if the client that's looking for coverage doesn't quite fit in that price point or the risk tolerance, it's not going to work for that company. And then, like I said, then the individual is looking to go shop that through somebody else at that point.
So, Grant, if someone's sitting and watching this today and thinking, you know what, this is really speaking to me, I
Yeah.
need to do something, but you know what, I don't want to waste Grant's time or another agent. What would your advice be to them?
Yeah. I would say reach out to whichever insurance professional that you would choose. I would also strongly recommend that you work with that insurance professional versus your abilities to do it online. Can you do it that way? Yes, but it's an industry like so many that can get complicated, and you just want to make sure you're good moving forward, having that person to bounce ideas and thoughts off of. So you are never going to bother an insurance agent by reaching out and saying, hey, I have this question, or I have this thought, or I'm not sure what to do moving forward. That's our job. That's our role, to have that conversation with you, best point you and guide you moving forward of, hey, let's look at doing it this way or that way. Truly, at the end of the day, I want what's best for households and individuals. Would I love to work with everybody? Yes. It's not going to happen all the time, but I want to be that sounding board for somebody of, maybe they're unsure of what to do, or they're getting into something they've never been before, a first-time home buyer, they're getting into a business, whatever the case may be, is, so that you're comfortable moving forward. Maybe you have to work with banks, etc. Let us get that ready to go for you, and make that process as streamlined and easy as possible.
Well, Grant Davenport with the Davenport Agency of Farmers Union, thanks so much for
Absolutely.
visiting today. And I hope you have a great day. Thanks everyone for watching.
Yes. Thanks, Andy.